What if 80% of what you write down on your to-do list just didn't matter? Let that sink in. Seriously, what if 4 out of 5 things that you've got written down to do this week are just distractions or a waste of time? Most of us start the week with a long list, but we end up accomplishing only a fraction of what we set out to do. But what if I told you that a tiny handful of actions, things that really often take less than 10 minutes, are what actually create all the momentum in your business? Now, stick with me because I'm going to show you how to find those actions so you can stop being all busy and start being effective. So let's get in momentum. Do you know that feeling, the one where the week is a blur? I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about, right? We write down 50 tasks. We get a little dopamine hit every time we check one of them off. Reply to 10 emails. Check. Post on Instagram. Check. Research a new microphone. Check. By the end of the day, our business fundamentally, has it changed? Are we closer to our big goals? Does activity or busyness equal progress? Usually the answer is no. Over the years coaching hundreds of business owners, I started noticing a pattern, the real breakthroughs, the moments that led to landing a new client, doubling their income, or finally getting clear on a new direction or product for their business. They almost always came from the same handful of activities, 16 of them to be precise. Most of them take less than 10 minutes to complete, but the impact can last for weeks, months, or even years. I've turned those 16 breakthrough activities into a fun game of bingo just for you. So make sure you grab your bingo card below. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we build these task lists, these prisons? It really comes down to 2 things: a fear of the unknown and a craving for certainty. It feels safe and productive to fill our day with small, easy to define tasks. It's predictable. I know I can answer 10 emails. I know I can schedule a social media post. What's scary? The big stuff, the hard questions, the things that actually grow your business. Things like define my ideal client or systematize my onboarding process. Those are huge. Those are a little ambiguous. And because we don't know where to start, we retreat to the comfort of the to-do list. And instead, we empty our inbox, we tidy our desk, or just send out another email to our list. Now, in my book, Daily Momentum, I talk a lot about the P word, procrastination. It's actually not as big and scary as you think. When you really break it down, what it means is what I didn't do. So the next time you catch yourself saying in your head or out loud, I'm procrastinating or I procrastinated, I want you to do a retake and instead say, I'm not doing fill in the blank. And then instead of being the victim of some big, scary procrastination disease, you see it's simply a choice you're making not to do something. Sometimes that's all it takes to choose differently. The truth is, the things that create real results in our business, in our lives, are often a little ambiguous. They take courage and clarity, not the most time to do. And the things that take the most time are just busy work that keep us comfortable. So how do we break out of this? We need a mindset shift. You've heard me talk before about the 80-20 rule or the 80-20 principle, right? It was originally identified by Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto over 100 years ago when he noticed that roughly 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. Over time, people started noticing this pattern everywhere. About 20% of efforts often created about 80% of results. 20% of customers generate 80% of revenue for most companies. 20% of problems create 80% of headaches. And yes, often 20% of our actions create 80% of our results. The challenge is that most people understand the concept, but they don't know what their 20% actions are. So instead of giving you a vague principle today and saying, go figure out your 20%, I've decided to do all of the heavy lifting for you. So I took all of those years of coaching conversations, the breakthroughs, the observations, the patterns, and as I mentioned, I identified 16 breakthrough actions that consistently seem to create outsized results, not because they're complicated, because they're powerful. They're the kinds of actions that create awareness. And awareness is what changes behavior. And behavior is what changes result. They create momentum. Each of the 16 actions that are in the bingo game have 3 characteristics. First, they create clarity. So they might answer a question, remove confusion, or help you see something that you've been missing. Second, they might open doors. Maybe they create new opportunities, new conversations, new referrals, new ideas, or potential revenue. And third, they might build an asset for you, a system, a habit, a process, a piece of content, something that is going to continue working long after you've invested the time in completing the task. Notice what's not on that list. Doesn't have to be difficult. Doesn't have to take hours. It doesn't have to feel productive. Often it's fun. And it definitely doesn't have to be complicated. Out of the 16, some of the most powerful ones may only take you 5 minutes to complete. Because I know that you're busy, and if this is just too complicated, you're just going to get pulled into the daily grind before you can enjoy the benefits of these actions. So I want to share 3 examples directly from the bingo card, just to tease you, that demonstrate exactly what I mean. One of the things that you'll notice on the bingo card, I know you're going to go download it, right? It's in the description below, is that the squares are grouped into 4 categories. So there's recharge, there's rewind, there's reset, and there's big frog. And that wasn't an accident, because creating momentum isn't just about taking action. It's about taking the right kinds of action at the right time. Recharge helps you create energy that you're going to need. Rewind helps you create awareness. Reset helps create clarity and direction. And the big frog helps you stop procrastinating and finally tackle the things that you've been avoiding, realizing that maybe procrastinating isn't a real thing. Because let's be honest, most procrastination is not laziness. It's perfectionism. It's overwhelm. It's not knowing where to start. That's why some of the biggest breakthroughs happen when we finally do the thing we've been putting off. So let's break down a little bit more. What makes these actions breakthrough actions? All right, first let's talk about clarity, right? Because one of the fastest ways that you can create momentum is to ask yourself a question, especially a question around a topic that you've been avoiding. And sometimes we have questions that we want to answer, but they're just too big and we need to break them into smaller bites. So when you get clear on that, you'll start to see figuring out what to do next gets a lot easier. You could do a lot in 10 minutes that can be unlocked when you ask yourself a really powerful question. It can eliminate hours of confusion. That is momentum that comes from asking a question. The next type of activity that you're going to find in the 16 actions are activities that are about filling up your tank and exposing yourself to new ideas. And that's why, for example, listening to a podcast is one of the bingo squares. Podcasts are one of my absolute favorite ways to recharge and reboot my thinking. I can feel stagnant and stuck or in a funk, and I can flip through the podcasts, listen to something, and completely feel different in 5 minutes. One 10-minute little burst of concentrated listening to a podcast or to an audiobook can generate content ideas, marketing ideas, breakthroughs of conversations you want to have with your team members or systems you might want to create, revenue ideas. Never underestimate the power, and I love that I keep saying exposing yourself. Like, It sounds like you're going to be running around naked listening, but that's not what I'm suggesting. Exposing yourself, exposing your eardrums is what I'm talking about to fresh thinking. That is going to create a breakthrough for you. Now, the third kind of activity that you'll find on the bingo card are the ones that are about actually implementing or doing something, because they just challenge you to do a burst of action. And I find that often when you do that, you're going to realize that you don't need a lot of time to actually get stuff done, that you can achieve a lot in 5 or 10 minutes. Something as simple as like the challenge on one of the squares to build one system. Now, a system is really a pre-made choice that you can repeat again and again and again. Might be a checklist, doesn't have to be complicated. The squares that are around implementation, like creating a system or actually doing something like reducing your expenses and really taking the action, are going to be fanned by the other two categories of tasks and create really like the trifecta effect. Most people know that they need to create systems. They've known for years, but it's the kind of thing that you put off. You're busy, you'll do it later, right? But when I challenge you, hey, you keep repeating the same task over and over again. This week, take 10 minutes and create a system for that. Over a year, that's hours and hours returned to you. Now, these 16 actions on the bingo card, they're so much more than just individual tasks to just knock off. They're going to make things easier for you going forward. They're going to help you build systems, reduce stress, reduce decision fatigue, and create time freedom. Some of them will help you recharge, some of them will help you rewind, and some of them will help you reset. And of course, you're going to find on there some big frogs that you can tackle. They all have one thing in common, though. They create awareness. And awareness is going to change your behavior, which is going to create the breakthroughs from these 16 powerful activities. You're starting to see that these activities are more than just about being busy. It's about making progress. Most of what's on our to-do list a lot of the time, as I mentioned at the beginning, is just comfortable distraction. The real magic, the real momentum comes from these small, powerful breakthrough actions that either create clarity, open doors, or build assets for us that will keep on giving back. We've talked about 3 different examples of types, like answering a specific question, listening to a podcast, getting new information, or creating a system or a template to simplify your work. But imagine what would happen if you did just one of those small actions every other day. By the end of the month, you'd have completed all 16 actions. You'd have more clarity and more assets than you've built maybe in the last 6 months. And instead of just being busy, you'd be operating on a completely different level. Now, I know you still are going to create a to-do list with other things on it. I'm just encouraging you, do these 16 actions, challenge yourself, play the bingo game so that you can also see the difference, the contrast between activities that are just busy work and the types of activities that create breakthroughs, assets, and continue to keep giving back to your business. Now, I want you to complete one bingo square today. Take one small action, a breakthrough action that matters, and start paying attention to what happens next. Don't forget to get your bingo card using the link below.